Hello, welcome to another episode of the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition's Forum. I'm your host, David Dadekian, a small business owner here in Rhode Island. I own Eat Drink Rhode Island, as you can see there on the screen. Thank you again for joining us with another great episode. We've got another great guest. I'm really happy with the guests that we have on this show. It's always a pleasure to talk. We've got Lisa Raiola today. She is the executive director of Hope and Main, a food business incubator in Warren, Rhode Island. Welcome to the show, Lisa. Thank you for being here. There we go. Welcome.
Thanks for David.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have you. I should say up front, I don't book the show. We have a wonderful Jennifer Ortiz does all our booking, and I didn't choose. I'm more than happy to have Lisa here, of course, but I didn't choose because I don't want people to think that we're going to be just doing an all food focused show. But today will be that. I mean, today is what we're going to have a very food focused show here. We have a number of different support groups around the state that help small businesses, and in the case of Hope and Main, they help small food businesses, and many of them become big food businesses. So Lisa, why don't you we'll start off. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Hope and Main, so for the folks out there that don't know.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. And I am Lisa Raiola, and I am the president and founder of Hope and Main. And what do we do? So Hope and Main helps anyone with a food dream, an idea to start and own a food business, to make that a reality. When you come here, you use our kitchens. You can essentially rent them by the hour. And we do all of the wraparound services that will help you to be successful in launching and scaling that business. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some of those things as we go on. But to start, I'll say that we've launched over 450 businesses in about 8 years. And we've had maybe 70 or 80 graduates. You would know a lot of them in Rhode Island. And David works with lots of them as well, very effectively, I think. And about half of the businesses that we have launched are still in business, which is really big in the food business.
Yeah, that is huge. I mean, that is really the point. I mean, as anyone most of our members or small business owners have launched other small businesses as well, and they know, the life of a small business can sometimes be short. It's just the reality of the nature of how it works. But to have to say almost half of what you've launched in 8 years are still in existence is very impressive. And I know and love many of them. I want to. People to understand. So there's lots of commercial kitchens out there in the world, especially in bigger parts of the country, Brooklyn and LA and things of that nature. But this was our first here in Rhode Island, and you're not just a commercial kitchen. I mean, that's why the Small Business Coalition wanted to talk to you today, because you really are an incubator. You really do all those wraparound services like you talked about. Can you list some of those for the folks so they understand what it is that Hope and Main provides?
Yeah, it is important to understand that, we don't say here's a key, there's the kitchen, good luck, right. Because we probably wouldn't be here anymore either. I like to say that our tagline is make food your business, and a lot of people can make food, many cannot make it their business. So we have to do more than just provide what I call shared infrastructure. So the shared infrastructure are the rental kitchens that you can rent by the hour, and that makes it very accessible, very affordable. But then beyond that, there's sort of three more legs to the chair, if you will. One is business and technical assistance that we provide. So, we have something called First Course, and it's a 5-week class that or set of classes that teaches you everything from corporate formation and business planning to lean manufacturing, labeling, packaging, distribution, sales, etc. So the business assistance, if you were starting any business, like accounting and business planning, but then the technical assistance, because you're starting a food business, is very specific. So getting your food safety manager's license, understanding the regulations, the permits, all of that, what you need. That regulatory piece is huge. So we help with that. And then the third leg of the stool is what I would call access to markets, meaning, you know, food is often a two-sell buy. In order to get in someone's mouth, you've got to get on somebody else's shelf, right? So you,
Yep.
so the B2B piece of business to business piece of how can I get on the shelf at Whole Foods or Stop and Shop or Dave's Marketplace. So we have relationships with those buyers, but we also host something called a tabletop show that David has been to. We now host it at Farm Fresh, which is great. And we basically have, 50 or 60 small food businesses, and we introduce them to the buyers. And that buyer community in last April was about 250 buyers. And that includes universities, hospitals, et cetera, along with grocers and retailers and restaurants, even who all want local food to be featured in their establishment, right?
Right.
So that's the third leg of the stool. And then the last one, David, would be connections to capital. So connecting our makers to capital. Many times you can start a small business very affordably at Hope and Main, but it can be difficult to scale without investment and capital, whether it's debt or equity. So I would say connections to capital, access to markets, business and technical assistance, and that shared infrastructure. Those four things I think are critical to creating the conditions for someone to be successful in launching and scaling a food business.
Exactly. Yeah. And the conditions, I mean, that's the key word, because, we've all got that recipe that we love to make, and people are like, oh, you should package this and sell it. And, realistically speaking, it's a very rare case where it can actually be an actual product. But it's nice that there is a resource if you do decide to take it to that level. I mean, so obviously, small business owners in Rhode Island are familiar with lots of different regulations for different small businesses. There's that huge other layer that I want to get into for food. But I also think before we get to that, we should point out that market part. I think that market part is key. You become a lawyer or an accountant, or you start a doctor's office or a painting business, and no one comes in and says, "Oh, I'd love to see your work, to paint my house." You show some pictures, and and that's the job. Not, can you come paint a piece of my house? Let me see how that is, and then maybe I'll get you to do the rest. But in the food business, that's kind of what I deal with this all the time with my clients. It's painful in a way because it costs money, but you got to give away that product.
Right. You do.
People have to taste it. People have to, know what it tastes like if they want to get more of it. And I think so that aspect of the food business, I think, is something that really not enough people understand and realize. And like you said, you do these tabletop shows. I've had tastings at festivals. But you got to give that product away, and that costs money. So it really is. There's a lot of the business aspect of it that I want to get into here. But let's start with the regulatory piece. The health department. Any of us in the food business knows it's, I don't know what the right word is. Difficult, I guess, is the best word. Without being too critical, because let's be honest, regulations are important. I'm not saying they're not. I mean, obviously, it's hugely important for people's health and safety. But it can be a bit burdensome, and what Hope and Main does for their members is fantastic. Tell us a little bit on the regulatory side and how that works.
So I will say that yes, the health department can be challenging. The regulations are challenging.
Yes.
We've had very good experience with the health department, partly because they practically live here, which is a good thing. So
right.
We have one officer from the health department who's here at least once a week, if not more. And so that helps our members to actually feel a sense of security that they're doing things the right way. Because when you're in the food business, you're always a little bit worried, or you can be worried that, wait, do I have the right permit for this? Do I have the right equipment to be catering offsite or doing some type of, event? and so when you're here, you shouldn't have to worry about any of that because we really are holding your hand on the regulatory side. Are you making an acidified food, a shelf stable food? Are you going to sell that directly to the eater? Are you going to sell that, wholesale and it's going to be on a grocer shelf? I mean, there's all different regulations depending on how you're selling that product, what type of product it is, et cetera. So we help you to get your food processing license, which you're going to need if you're here at Hope and Main, and everyone's food processing license is the same address, 691 Main Street in Warren, because that's where
Right.
you're licensed to make it, right? We help you get your food safety manager's license, which is huge. And that is going to teach you a lot about safe food handling practices, which I think, again, gives you another level of confidence. It's a certification you could use outside of Hope and Main as well. If you need challenge testing or anything like that, or a HACCP plan, we know if it's juice, if it's seafood, we know what those things are. So I feel like that takes the guesswork out of the regulations because it can be complicated in food. We've started, for example, cocktail trucks here, and when we did the first one, it was a little challenging, but I used to say, when you've seen one food business, you've seen one. I don't say that anymore because we've seen.
Yeah, no, it has gotten better than that, right? Yeah.
And also we help the health department and DBR, and sometimes to clarify through a test case how something can be done. And because they know this is a safe environment, we've got lots of oversight here. I think they're more willing to work through that equation with us, with a member, than they might be if somebody just sort of showed up off the street. So I have very good things to say about the health department because they've been such a great partner, and they've been a great, they've been terrific to work for our members to work with, so they know how to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your credit, I can say certainly I've known many businesses that have come out of Hope and Main, but I've known a few over the years that haven't used your services and started on their own. And I think in general, because of Hope and Main, because of the understanding of the food businesses, and by having that person at the health department or many people at the health department working with you so closely for the last 8 years, it's gotten better, which is nice to see. I mean, we always want to see government get a little better, get a little more efficient, a little more, cooperative. And I think because of your work there at Hope and Main, we have seen progress and change at the health department. Still, the regulations are important. I don't want to be that type of person who says it's not, because I know, especially being in the food business, the dangers of improperly handled food. So that's key for all these small businesses to learn that and understand that. But I think it has gotten better and easier over the years because of what Hope and Main has done.
Yeah, yeah. I also want to to point out that the regulations are changing, and now Rhode Island will have cottage laws, right? Which we have not. I think either one of the last, if not the last state in the United States to, again, Rhode Island didn't do it. We didn't have cottage laws.
Yeah, we were the last.
And partly because, we have one health department, we don't have one per county, or certainly not one for every city and town. So they are a gallon of water over an acre of land. I get it. However, I do feel that for a certain category of foods and of businesses, it makes sense to allow people to start at home. And maybe they're hobbyists and they're never really going to grow that business, and so they don't need a Hope and Main. But what I am envisioning is that we would be able to bring some of those same supports that we have here to, the home cook who's starting a business at home, because maybe that's where it starts and it scales, to something bigger. But those same things, business and technical assistance, access to markets, access to capital, could really apply, to the cottage industry folks as well. So I'm happy because it does lower the barriers for folks, and I think that's important.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think a lot of that type of business, can grow out of their homes into a Hope and Main, or bigger. And that's the beauty of it. That's the amazing thing. We get to see that. So let's turn. You mentioned a couple of times. Let's turn to that business support, because I think, especially as the Small Business Coalition, we try to work with a lot of small businesses across the board. We working with anything and everything that encompasses small business in Rhode Island. You're very focused but it's still a huge chunk of what's going on in Rhode Island. I think the food business sector in Rhode Island, obviously I'm a little biased, but the food sector business is still a very large chunk of what goes on here. And those business skills are definitely a bit different than some of the other businesses in the state. So let's talk about what do you do there. How do you see Hope and Maine working with small businesses outside of food businesses to grow?
Yeah. So when somebody comes, like you said, with like, here's my grandmother's salsa recipe, that's great. And everyone says that I should sell it. However, taking a recipe and turning a recipe into a product is not, it's a mean feat sometimes. It's not
Yeah,
just, we don't just multiply the salt by 100, right? So just need it working with food scientists, right? Getting the recipe to scale. Um, getting that to be made consistently, and putting it in some type of a package. What kind of package? So
right.
now you talk about food scientists. Now we're talking about packaging people, maybe even graphic design people, right? So now I've got to turn that recipe into a product, and I've got to make that product consistently. I have to learn, say, lean manufacturing skills. If one batch is is 6 units, like, I want to know how to batch my ingredients on the one end, so I'm coming up with exactly the number of units at the other end, and I'm not wasting it, right?
Right.
So I don't put in enough ingredients for 10 and a half batches. I want to put in for either 10 or 11, right? I don't want to do that. So that's another piece, right? So now, okay, now I'm making a product. What should I charge for that product? What's the unit cost to make it? What will the market bear? Go out and do some benchmarking. Understand that you need to price in, as you said, product sampling or giveaways. So I have to price in a distributor. I don't want to be selling that product at a lower price outside of Dave's Marketplace, because the buyer at Dave's Marketplace isn't going to be happy about that, right?
Right.
Those kinds of things. So I like to say we take you from recipe to product to brand to business. That trajectory is really important, and it can take some time, and you can make a lot of mistakes along the way, which we are thrilled that you're making mistakes, because failure is not the F word at Hope and Maine. It's actually a good thing. Like, go fast or fail fast. It shouldn't cost you a lot of money. And this whole process, David, is about de-risking, taking something and taking the risk out of it, so you're a better investment for a bank or some other type of institution, or crowd lending, or whatever it may be on the other side, because you can show that you de-risked your idea at Hope and Maine, and it didn't cost you a lot of money to do that.
Right. Yeah. And I think I want to get to the funding piece of it as well, but I think in going through that process, you just listed a bunch of businesses that are also small businesses out there in our community that could help the businesses coming out of Maine. So I want to make sure those businesses know your website is makefoodyourbusiness.org. If you're an accountant out there, or a graphic designer, or any of those things that Lisa listed, think about all the things that go into a product, like something on the shelf you see at the supermarket. And you're a small business, you could work with these small businesses, and that's the beauty of Rhode Island. I think that's always
100%, 100%.
that thing.
So, David, do you know if for every one direct job that's created in the food manufacturing industry, it creates 2.3 indirect jobs?
Right.
It's a multiplier, right? Because of the graphic designers, the people who are driving the trucks here,
Yep.
the people that are making the packaging. So it's manufacturing 100%, and it
Yeah.
does have this great amplifying effect for the whole state. And I hope we haven't done this event in a couple of years. I hope we do it again. It was called the Freebie. Do you remember it? It was the Food Resource Business Exchange.
Oh yeah. Yes, I do.
Invited all of those businesses you just mentioned to Hope and Maine, meet our members, because you could provide them with services, all the services that you just talked about.
Right. Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah, that would be a great one to have back. I think the Small Business Coalition would be happy to support that as well, because I think that that's what That's what makes Rhode Island tick. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I've beaten this drum for many years. I used to say this when I would sit in those meetings, with the previous governor's task force, and they say, "Oh, we're going to bring back manufacturing in Rhode Island." And I'd be like, we have manufacturing in Rhode Island, right? I remember once taking the whole group to Yacht Club Soda, because I mean, that's a factory, that's a plant. I mean, yeah, it's two guys running bottles of very custom soda, but that's a manufacturing facility. And
Yes.
certainly what you're doing there is manufacturing. So yeah, we don't need to bring it back. I mean, we can certainly other types, but we've got it. I mean, that's the thing. I think.
Well, you raised such a good point, because so we, let me say, like, maybe there's 70 businesses here right now, right here in this facility right now.
Yep.
Where are they going to go when they scale?
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I haven't gotten to that topic yet. So thank you for bringing that up.
That's where the real action is for that amplifier effect of job creation in food. Because when they scale, if we don't have places for those businesses to scale, either co-packing facilities or next level facilities, then you're going to have one of three things: stagnation, they just can't grow; migration, they're leaving; or the worst of all, cessation, they die.
Right.
Because they cannot go to the next place. And Rhode Island needs to invest in that. These are the little companies that have made the investment in Rhode Island. Where is Rhode Island's investment in them so that they can grow?
It's very true. I can say, I've certainly seen all three of those examples over the last few years. In fact, I just saw one this morning. One of your businesses, graduated, and she can't produce her products here in Rhode Island. She's using a kitchen up in Massachusetts.
Right.
That's the reality. I mean, and that's needs to be done to continue growing our business. And I've seen businesses have said, I just can't grow anymore, and close up. The other is stagnation, which thankfully we haven't seen a lot of here, but it can happen. I mean, that's the reality of it. But there are success stories too. My favorite success story, I'm a little biased because they're friends of mine, and I've worked with them for many, many years. They're so kind to me. They actually first introduced their product at one of my events years ago. The Backyard Food Guys, Luby and Matt, sweethearts. Yeah, I was gonna say, I know they're on the board behind you there. They're
Let me find them. Luby and Matt. Here they are.
Yep.
There they are. They're behind me right here. Do you see them?
They are rock stars. They are. And they're a great example to use, because they started with just a few products. They added more. Now they've got so many products. I've actually lost count of the products. I just bought a couple days ago one of the new barbecue sauces at Dave's Market.
Oh yeah, the fruity ones. Which one was it?
I bought the peach one, which I love. It's fantastic. Yeah. I want to go back and buy the raspberry one. But I've lost track. Literally, we were sitting at the dinner table with Brenda, and she knows them all very well as well. And we were talking about, we've got the jalapeno relish and the salsa and all these different products. And we're like, I can't even keep track. I can't keep track, which is a great success story. They've done very well for themselves. Excuse me. They were just, what did they just get? They just was the Whole Foods product of the.
They got the title, the Whole Foods Supplier of the Year award.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
It's like huge.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And they're a Hope and Maine graduate. I mean, that's the thing. They started their business there. And that's what I think people should understand. I remember going and visiting them there, and they were making salsa in the giant the vats there. But they can only do that for so long. I mean, when you make that salsa like that, and you're only churning out, I say only, but you're only churning out 144 cans or something. You need to grow that. You can't obviously get on the shelf at Whole Foods or Dave's Market with 12 cases of a product. You need to have hundreds of cases of a product. And so that's why I think all those things that you listed that Hope and Maine can bring to businesses is so key and important. But let's get back. I wanted to definitely talk about the financial aspect of it, because it's not inexpensive to create a new business. Any small business knows that, but I think small business owners who create something that's tangible and selling a product know that there's that extra layer of cost. And food businesses, for whatever it's worth nowadays, aren't treated the same. I think they're considered, and they are higher risk. I'm not going to say they're not, but they're considered much higher risk than I think banks and other organizations should be attributing to them. How do you work with gaining capital and things of that nature?
Yeah, you're right. They should not be treated as, especially if they're coming from here, because
Right.
this super high risk, high failure rate. What you're failing to take into account is the incubation
Yeah.
process.
No,
Is
that's an excellent point. I'm glad you bring that up. I think there should be an extra layer of insurance by working with an organization like yours.
Absolutely, and sometimes there is. So there are some small banks that will, and particularly the community, lenders that see that and that take that into account. I think that doesn't happen enough. I hate the word unbankable. I think that
Yeah.
is we need to eliminate it from our vocabulary. It's not about that. It's again, it's about this process of de-risking. If, for example, many of our makers, we recommend that their go-to-market strategy is actually literally a farmer's market. Start at a farmer's market because it's the least regulation. It's meeting your eater right away. It's immediate revenue that you can, but it also is getting your brand name out there. I mean, look at like Buns. Look at some of these places that have blown up. Blueby and Matt started at the farmer, started at
Right.
our farmer's market, right? We have a market right here. And there are so many farmers markets in Rhode Island. It's such a good launch pad. Now, are the banks, not looking at the velocity there versus the velocity on a grocery shelf? Why don't we look at different metrics, right? And I feel like we now have some of those relationships with the banks where they are looking at those metrics in a different way than they were 8 years ago when we started. I get it. Or we're now working with Kiva. In fact, we're just about to announce this probably in the next week or so. Do you know Kiva, David?
Yeah.
They're the
Oh, yeah.
crowd lending platform, and Kiva is zero interest, zero fees, no collateral loans that are crowdsourced from all over the world, and they have like a
Right.
98% rate of payback. So we're the first Kiva trustee in Rhode Island, meaning that if we endorse your project, half of the loan will come from LISC, the local LISC,
Yep.
which is fantastic. So you can, if you had to raise 10,000, LISC will do 5,000 based on our endorsement.
That's great.
So that's built on social credit and social capital, not your credit score and not your collateral. Because when you graduate from Hope, Maine, you don't have collateral. We were in an incubator. You don't have bricks and mortar, but that's what got you to that point. That's what enables you to experiment, right? So I would love, people to join the chorus of why that is so important to, on the debt and equity side and for these businesses, because anyone who's an investor should understand the value of that. And it's not just an algorithm that you pump through, a calculator.
Right. Absolutely true. And especially, I think, it's obviously it's difficult to predict what is successful or not. And I don't mean to pick on any other type of industry out there, but when you look at the types of like apps or things that are funded that make little to no sense and have no real revenue model, and you look at a food business, which again, I'm not going to say it's not risky. I'm not going to say there aren't challenges, but there's actual physical product there, and you can show a revenue model. It
Right.
seems almost crazy that these things aren't funded in the same way, to some level. It just doesn't, it doesn't make sense.
Agreed. You and I are in violent agreement on that.
Yeah, yeah. So, let's talk one more piece of the puzzle that I think Hope Maine has been great at. You mentioned it before, and of course, nothing is a guarantee in the food business. I'm very close to, especially Ken over at Dave's. I talk with him all the time, and he's a great person. And he and I have had this conversation. And anyone who just does grocery shopping for their family knows there's only so many inches of space on a shelf at a supermarket. There's it's hard to get a product into those types of places. And then think about when you stand there and you look at that shelf, how many different products are on there. But I think Hope Maine's been great at kind of driving that and getting that foot in the door for small local businesses and into local grocery stores, especially. Talk about that a bit, because I think you've had a great relationship there. It's nice to see. I always enjoy whenever there's a press conference at Dave's Market. I like going and seeing everyone. It's a great reunion.
So yeah, well, yeah, of course we are going to blow kisses to Dave's Marketplace because they are, as a local family owned business,
Right.
they definitely walk the walk there, and they have taken so many of our member products without slotting fees, without a distributor, which is very, very unusual. And they'll give it a shot. Maybe they won't put it in every store, but they'll see if they can get something moving. And you got to listen to the buyer, because the buyer's going to tell you it's not going to move at this price. It can't
Right.
be, there's really nothing, no worse experience for you than to put something overpriced on the shelf, doesn't go anywhere. It's not going to work. So they're really good about all of those details of how you get on the shelf, but then how you move product on the shelf, right? So we love Dave's for that reason. I would also point out, and you probably know this better than anybody, that during COVID, consumer behavior changed in a way that will never go back, which is the
Right.
way we
Absolutely.
access food. The curb had a moment in COVID. And, since when did you just like park at a curb and have something handed to you? But now we do that. We have different ways of seeking our favorite foods, and that created a lot of opportunity that wasn't there before. I think particularly for e-commerce, where and there's some interesting ways to sell online that I think never existed before for food, that consumers are more acculturated to, and will go find that special item that they love, and they'll go out of their way. What would have been before COVID and insane, they would never have special ordered the granola online, but now like that's part of their routine, right? So people are doing that, and we are really teaching our members to leverage those channels because they're real, and you can say more about your price. So when you see, you have the 3 seconds, if that, on a grocery shelf, but there's a wall of 50 salsas, and like you got to stand
Yeah.
out. Online, it's much more highly curated, and there's sites, Fair, and a bunch of them that you can go on, and they're not going to take every salsa that's out there. And then you could like tell your story. There's click throughs. There's things that you can show your product deconstructed. You could show it in a recipe, whatever, that didn't exist before. So I think there's a really great new channels that were not the case before. You had to get on the grocery shelf, and I'm not diminishing the grocery shelf at all. But also, when you
Right.
walk into a grocery store, you have a budget, and Kenny will tell you this all the time. I could spend $150, or I'll spend $250. So that really expensive specialty item, like you're really thinking about it, you don't have the same thought process online or even in a farmer's market, where it's just a different mindset. It's not the zero sum game of the weekly grocery shop. So, and those channels are more prevalent than ever before.
Absolutely. No, absolutely true. I have several clients I work with over the last couple of years. We've built e-commerce, and it's fascinating. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of it, but it's fascinating to see how much shipping has changed. The adaptability of shipping. Obviously, we've all seen the fleets of Amazon vehicles driving around our streets, and I don't recommend that. But I think to understand that there are a lot of small distributors out there now that can do those types of shipping, and even locally. I mean, I know a lot of people around Rhode Island that have gotten their own van and done their own local deliveries one day a week, which is I remember during the pandemic, I ordered some coffee from New Harvest Coffee, and a couple days later, Rick, who owns the company, showed up at my door, and it was really nice because I haven't seen Rick, it was during the pandemic. We usually see each other every few months, and we hadn't seen each other in ages. And he stood out by his car, and I stood by my front door, and we had a nice conversation. I was like, "This is what you do?" He's like, "Yeah, one day a week, I go deliver coffees around. It's nice." I was like,
I knew a lot
"Yeah,
of owners who were doing that. And again, meeting the eater, it's not the worst thing in the world that could
no,
happen to you.
absolutely not." Yeah,
It's a
no,
it's
it's very
it's a
true. I think. I'm sorry, I lost you there. What?
I said it's a good interaction. That's
Yes.
why we have meet your maker, meet your eater. It's a good thing.
Absolutely true. I tell that to the people who do my farmers markets all the time. People want to hear your story. They want to know what that story is. It's an exciting part. Like you said, you can put it on a website. Tell your story, but don't take it for granted, because it's a valuable part of the product is who you are, why you do it. Is it something special to a family member, or is there a cause that you care about? Or you just love a particular thing and you're really passionate about it. I love to hear those stories, and I think people really do gravitate to those types of stories and situations.
Yes, yes.
So this has been a fantastic conversation. I joked before we started that we could go for hours, you and I, because we've known each other for a long time, and love this business so much. I think we really covered all the big bases that Hope Main covers. Is there anything that you think I missed that we want to talk about?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that you really have been the tip of the spear, David, in this space for so many years, for well over a decade. You were here before we came on the scene, and you have been such a great champion of small food businesses. And I feel like more than anyone in Rhode Island, you understand that our local food economy stands on the shoulders of small business owners, not McDonald's. you know it's
Yeah,
it's it's
right.
it's the small business owners that are making this happen, and you have been supportive of that for as long as I can remember. And I just think it's very important to acknowledge that you saw this and you understood this, and you have been beating this drum long before everybody else came on the scene. So I do want to thank you for that on behalf not only of Hope and Maine, but also of all the small businesses that you've helped, and the fact that you've been such a champion for the local food economy. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. It's very kind of you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Well, I don't know what else I can say. I feel very warm, and I appreciate that very much. It really kind of you to say. Anyone out there looking to start a small food business, obviously Open Mate will be first on your list. Check them out. And if you are another type of small business that you think you could support a food business, please reach out to Hope and Maine and help out. And again, it's makefoodyourbusiness.org is the website. Thank you very much, Lisa Raiola.
Thank you, David.
Take care. So that was a great conversation. I really appreciate having Lisa on. I thank you very much to Jennifer for booking her and for thinking of her as a support business for Rhode Island small food businesses. As always, join the coalition. The Rhode Island Small Business Coalition is found at risbc.org and on Facebook and Twitter and all those things. risbc.org. And we'll see you next time on the forum. Thank you.